morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome to this episode of SMB Live Rewind, where we're going to take a look at hybrid identity in action. And really, we're just going to take a look at how Azure AD Connect has changed, some single sign-on for SaaS applications, and then lastly, I'll show you how to configure multi-factor authentication. And that's not only useful for your organization, but also for your customers. So let me actually hop into my virtual machine and show you how this all works. So I'm going to start with just single sign-on and some of the great things that we can do with the applications that we have out in the world today. So here I am inside of Azure. This is actual an Office 365 Azure Active Directory coming in. And for single sign-on, it's a matter of just simply going to your applications that are there. And you'll notice that I have some already listed: Intune, Office 365, as you might expect, and those were added in, but I can add in more. Well, remember, we talked about, if you looked at the slide presentation before this, there's over 2,600 apps that we can configure single sign-on or same sign-on for right within inside of Azure Active Directory. And you can search through it, and you'll see there is just a ton of different apps for us to work with inside of our environments. And as you can imagine, the plethora of applications that we might be able to configure and work with are all here. So let's say if I take, let me do a quick search on Salesforce and see what we can find. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick search on that. Hey, look at that, Salesforce is there, and then I can actually set up and configure that application to be enabled and tied to my directory. This is the process of how we can start setting up single sign-on and authentication for those apps. Well, we'll configure how that app is going to be set up. And by the way, this is going to be different for every application inside of our portal, those 2,600 apps. Some may be the same, but it all depends on how you're currently configuring this. Do you have a federation that you want to establish between Salesforce and your Azure Active Directory? It'll take you through those steps. You'll have to know the sign-in URL. They're all different. So it's just really a matter of going through those different applications that your customers are using for you to set up that single sign-on. But it's all there as a part of Azure Active Directory for you to use. Now with Azure Active Directory, there's a free version and there's AD Premium, basically a basic and a premium version. Basic will let you do up to 10 apps for single sign-on, but that's it. Premium is unlimited, so it really depends on what your customers are doing. So that's one of the benefits and one of the additional services you can offer your customers from an identity perspective. What is the other one? And this one you probably have done a few times, and that's with DirSync. Now, if you've done DirSync but haven't looked at the new tool, Azure AD Connect, this is the tool that we actually use to synchronize our on-prem directories to our Office 365 directories, if that's what you've done in the past, or Azure Active Directory more specifically. And if I just do a quick view of current configuration, you'll see that I'm syncing Halo 2, which is my on-prem AD, to an Azure Active Directory for us to work with it. Now, how do we configure and change that? So let me go ahead and just say customize synchronization options, and I'm going to go ahead and click on next. It's going to ask me the user for my credentials. Notice it's at my demo account. For those of you that may recognize that name and wondering where it is, it's actually a part of the officedemos.com. So microsoftofficedemos.com, if you go to that URL, you can actually provision these types of environments. And a matter of fact, a lot of the demonstrations that you'll see me and my team do come from that Office Demos or the CIE environment for us to leverage. So I'm just using it for the purpose of demos. So I'm going to just go ahead and log in. Give it a second to verify the credentials. Should establish. I've already established my Halo 2 as a directory, and click on next. Now if you haven't worked with Azure AD Connect, this is actually relatively new. We can do domain and OU filtering, so we can control which users are now synchronized. And we also have a wide variety of password synchronization features. Do we want to do right back down to our directory structure, depending on what you're doing there? Attribute sync, and there's also a couple of additional choices. Some are grayed out. I'm not actually doing a hybrid deployment of Exchange, but to get a good general sense of how this tool can work for you. And if I go all the way back to the beginning, you'll notice that I can refresh the directory schema for on-prem. I can do a staging mode. I can even change sign-on for that particular user. So I have the ability here to do some great things for working with my environment. If I need to change that administrative credential for whatever reason, maybe I create a service account for that, I have that ability. So if you haven't looked at Azure AD Connect in a while, you're going to want to check this tool out, especially if you're using DirSync today for your customers. You'll want to refresh them with Azure AD Connect and show them and some of the additional configurations that will help you and your business as well as them. So I'm going to go ahead and close close that down. And for the last demonstration, I'm going to show you a couple things of what happens when you synchronize those accounts. I'm going to hop into my Office 365 administrative portal. So I'm in the admin portal for my mod 27714 account, and I'm going to hop into it. Now I'm actually in the new portal. I'm actually going to pop over to the old admin center. I can find it here. I just like the old admin center personally. I know eventually I'll have to learn the new one, but I'm just going to pop over to the old admin center, and I want to show you something that I think is quite frankly very useful on how you work with our identities. So here I actually have my identities. Notice that inside this portal it shows me which ones have been synced, so I can tell which ones have been synced with my on-prem environment. So I know AD Connect is actually working. In fact, when you do AD Connect, it's going to ask you to do that type of work here to verify that the users are synchronizing. So I know that's there. But the one I want to really show you is multi-factor authentication. Let me just talk about that for a quick second. Now understand that whenever you set up multi-factor authentication, this is a good security mechanism for not only your customers but also for you. Because understand, if I'm a hacker and you as a partner, if I get your ID, well, guess what? Who have I gotten? I've gotten all of your IDs. I've gotten all of your accounts as a part of that process. So understand that when you do this type of work, multi-factor authentication is something that you should be enabling for your business, but also for your customer business. Because remember, 70% of exploits have happened from weak passwords or bad authentications. Well, with multi-factor authentication, you're making it that much harder on those users to protect that data and work with it. So you'll notice here that I have a couple users, and some I've already enabled, like Alex Darrow inside of the environment. I can work with it. So how do we actually go ahead and enable a user for me to work with it? So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and enable Adam here. So I'm just going to select Adam, and all I'm going to do is simply say enable. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to enable multi-factor authentication for Adam, and next time I log on as Adam with my regular user ID and password, which is Adam W at my demo account, it's going to ask me to provision it and actually set it up. So let's actually go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to go ahead and enable multi-factor authentication. I'm going to go ahead and click on that close, and I'm going to close this browsing session, and I'm going to bring up another in private browsing session for me to work with, and I'm going to go to my Office 365 portal, and now I'm going to log in as Adam W at my demo account. And if everything is working properly, I should hear my phone ring here in a second. So let me go ahead and log on. And notice it's calling it, so hopefully here in a moment you'll hear my phone ring. I'll hold it up to the mic so you can hear it. Give it a second. Just bringing my phone up and ready to go. Oh, not yet. Hang on, I got to set it up first. So I'm going to go ahead and set it up, and it's going to ask me for a phone number. I'm just going to go ahead and put in my phone number for this particular webcast, and I'm going to go ahead and call me. So it's actually going to call it. Now I should hear the wonderful phone number and the ring for this. Hopefully here in a second we'll get that ring. And you'll notice that my phone is ringing. I'm going to go ahead and answer it. You're never supposed to do this in a presentation, but I'm going to do it here. I'm going to say answer, and I'm going to give it on speaker.
Microsoft sign-in verification system. Please press the pound key to finish your verification.
So I'm going to go ahead and hit the pound key there on my phone, and then hopefully it gives me a nice thank you. I'm going to go ahead and hang up the call, and then now it's configured. Now here's the trick with multi-factor authentication, folks. When your users, and when you set this up for your customers, you'll have to educate them a little bit. Because you have on-prem apps, things like Outlook, that may require email addresses, even Apple Mail and some of the other offices, they don't necessarily know how to talk to a multi-factor authentication provider. So what will happen is that when users set this up for the first time and they bring up their Outlook client on their desktop, they're going to be asked for a user ID and password. It's not the same user ID and password that they would use to log on. It's now going to be this application password password that they created. It's very important to make note of that. Now, if a user does forget this, you can reset up the process and have them reset up multi-factor authentication. But once again, for your customers, make sure you educate them on that. Otherwise, they won't be able to log on. And from this point on forward, what will happen is every time I log on as Adam, I'm now going to get an additional phone call as a part of my authentication process. It's going to ask me to verify it. Now, I did a very simple multi-factor authentication demo here. You can set it up so you also have to put a PIN number, just not hit the pound key as a part of it. So there's a lot of layers, especially when you get into the Azure Active Directory premium version of multi-factor authentication where you can secure it. But as I said before, even if you don't do this for your customers, folks, do this for your own accounts, because this is going to protect your business. Because if somebody gets a hold of your identities, they get the identities of all of your customers as well. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this quick tour of some of the identity opportunities that you can have with a hybrid identity with Microsoft solutions. I hope you enjoyed SMB Live Rewind, and have a great day.